new to me. This was a ruling that happened on January 14, 2014.
Right,
Al
part of the
Franken.
40,000 laws that they implemented, and half of our
This
country
was
or
a
more.
case. This was a
This
case.
is what?
A case. It was a case heard by the
a particular case.
Yes, it was Verizon versus the FCC. The courts had ruled in the FCC's favor before, and so they appealed it to the Federal U.S. Court of Appeals Court or Commission, and they ruled in Verizon's favor, big money's favor. So, I mean, we still have a chance to get a law established for net neutrality, where everything's a even field. It may not be perfect. It may not be exactly even as we know. It may be a little bumpy in areas, but it's better than what they're proposing to do. And a lot of that starts in 2015. Okay, let me go ahead and let this other person on, and I'll keep you on if you want to add in your 2 cents. Area code 386, you are live on Truth Talks Radio. Did you have a comment on this subject?
Absolutely. This is Shadow DXS. How you doing?
Oh, thank you for calling in. I'm so excited. I was hoping you would. I was pleased to see that you're listening in. This is a topic I'm learning a lot about within the last couple of days, and I was horrified at first when I heard about it. I felt like the Holocaust had come to America, and I felt so dirty for even living here. The censorship. Okay. Would you like to explain maybe in better words than I did what net neutrality is about?
Well, ultimately, what I came to talk on the show about was not necessarily net neutrality, but
okay.
People will always find a way to circumvent whatever these companies or government puts into effect. If they end up throttling our connections, if they end up trying to filter our content, essentially like China does, we always have ways around this. We always have ways around filters. Certain internet service providers like Comcast and Cox and Time Warner, they've actually been attempting this pre-court ruling version of the net neutrality removal, and that was they've been trying to block access to certain torrent sites, such as the Pirate Bay and other sites.
Right.
A simple installation of like Tor or other softwares that allow you to route past that, even using proxies and VPNs, which are free or even paid,
right,
will get you past all of that. No matter even if the United Nations itself were to gather as a collective force of governments and say flat out, we're going to do our best to demolish piracy, there will always be a generation of hackers out there, programmers, people who are fed up with this BS, and will go out of their way to make sure that they can still have the freedom that they used to.
But what about the common man? The common man that does not have the skills that some people do. That maybe not even know what a firewall is or a VPN.
Well, luckily, the common man has always been able to get their hands on the same type of technology that these hackers and programmers are pumping out there. I mean, in fact, they make it very, very easy to use, and they pump out video instructions, text-based instructions, pictures, everything that they can to teach anybody and everybody, give a quote-unquote noob-friendly version of how to utilize this software to remain, one, anonymous, and two, to access whatever you want.
That makes sense. Now, on my graphics I have on the show, I have one picture where it shows what we often see on a cable company, you buy a package. Do you think that's what it's going to come to next year when this may take effect, where people have to pay extra for Skype? And
I don't believe so. What I do think is going to happen is that if you end up showing that you are, in fact, pirating software and media and things like that, and you are doing things that your internet service provider may deem unfit for their services, they will throttle your connection heavily. I think that over time they will start to enforce new limitations, data caps, things like that, and tell you point blank you're violating our new terms of service, if you continue to do such, we have the right to completely terminate your connection. That's what I think is going to take place.
Okay. But what about the bottom dollar? I mean, they can make so much money on this if they wanted to. And...
Well, absolutely, but you can't really pay for piracy because that takes away from piracy. I mean, if they're gonna they're gonna try to if they're gonna try to get more money out of you, it'd be better for you to just pay the companies that you're pirating the content off of in the first place than to have to go and pay your internet service provider to get basic internet access that you already had at the beginning. So if you start off with, say, like we've got their top tier package right now for my internet service provider, we get 150 megabits a second. And we do notice that whenever we start torrenting things, our connection starts to slowly dial down unless we start using VPNs and randomizers and things like that to essentially protect ourselves. But if we just did it raw, like any random person would, our internet service provider starts to throttle us just a little bit each day until eventually I have to reboot the modem.
Now, I have a question. They're talking about making a law for net neutrality. Do you think that will happen? Because Al Franken, he's a senator, I can't remember what state, might be Michigan, I think it's Michigan, has been rather upset about the ruling lately. He believes that net neutrality should be covered under freedom of expression, freedom of speech. Do you think that that might happen, a law that would ensure the safety of net neutrality? Because I think that gives us an even playing ground, even if it's bumpy in areas. Like I think some people have had discussions that it's not equal.
The thing about it is that freedom of expression and freedom of speech aren't necessarily covered under what platform that you use it on. It's meant to be in a public version that's just out there for everybody here in the United States to utilize at their disposal. But when it comes to something like telephones and internet access and cable television, satellite TV, stuff like that, we are heavily regulated by the FCC and things like that, and our content providers that flat out say this is what you can and cannot do. We agree to it when we get our services installed, and that's it. When we violate the terms of services, they have the ability to penalize us for it.
True.
So ultimately, net neutrality never really existed. It was always what the service provider said that you could and couldn't do. It's just a matter of whether or not you're intelligent enough to bypass that.
Right. And you just bypass it through having your VPN and those type of things, correct?
Relatively, yeah.
Without giving any trade secrets. But, I'm learning a lot about this. Go ahead.
I'm saying that luckily they're not really trade secrets. In fact, they're actually public information. Anybody could start to Google search very simple words like virtual private network or proxy or, anonymizers, things like that. This will help them bypass any and all restrictions that are being placed by your internet service providers.
Well, that is good information. But me personally, I'm hoping that they will put before the Congress, the Senate, a bill that will protect net neutrality, because I see some problems with this, the fast and slow lane, and not everybody has those capabilities that you were talking about, or may not even know to Google those things.
Right.
And I think about the mom and pop stores that maybe promote their business through the internet, through YouTube, videos, video marketing, and how that's going to change if this is implemented. And it sounds very ominous. The big companies, the big money, they're all in favor of this. I don't see anything good about this happening. Could there be anything good coming out of the end of net neutrality?
Honestly, there's nothing good when it comes to limitations. A prime example is something that we've actually had for the past, I want to say, 10 years, maybe more, is the Great Firewall of China. And these guys have never experienced net neutrality. What they have experienced is a totalitarian-type internet access where they're told that they can access XYZ, and if they ever get caught accessing ABC, that's the end of them ever using the internet, period. And there's even more restrictions that fall into the world of physical that are pretty painful. But luckily our government won't get to that point. But they definitely will try their damnedest to do everything in their power to stop piracy and to stop things that are costing so-called damages to these, like you said, big brother companies out there. These big ones.
Right. I mean, Facebook has already said they're going to incur the charges, so you will not have to pay for Facebook. And I don't know.
Right.
I know. I
Facebook,
believe all knowledge should be free.
When it comes to something like Facebook, they've said a lot of things like they would never intrude on your privacy, but yet they were caught point blank using ads and various other things to allow third parties free reign to your privacy and sell it willingly to whatever it is they want to do.
And it's all there in black and white if people read.
It is, and that's the sad part is most people will just completely avoid having to read those long, tedious end-user license agreements and terms of services. I mean, if you actually took the time to read even, say you got yourself a brand-new copy of Microsoft Windows and you installed it on your computer, when it first pops up with the end-user license agreement, if you actually were to read that, you would know point blank that Microsoft is one of those companies that is more than willing to give out your information to whatever the hell it wants to.
Is there any way to agree with that without agreeing to those few points that you do not agree with, like the cookies and the selling of the information?
Well, that kind of comes across as to, is there any way to keep information safe when it's on a computer? And the best answer to that is you can, so long as it's not connected to the internet.
All right, I got that. I understand that. Just my mind is racing so fast, and I still think about the mom and pop stores. And I had such a good question, because this is all new to me. I've heard things before. I have a friend that's a copyright attorney in New York. He works in the garment district, and he has a page on Facebook, but he never puts anything on there. I think that was a really great point you made about Facebook, because they own any intellectual property that you put on Facebook. They have ownership. And again, people do not read their terms and conditions. And he just has a few pictures on there. That's it. Very little describing them even. And he's one of the best copyright attorneys in the nation. And that says a lot. I wish there was a different system we could go to that someone might invent. I mean, that would be the best. Because I believe all knowledge should be free, including computer programming, the codes. I think all that should be free. There is an upcoming case in the Supreme Court that is talking about computers and copyright, in particular the computer programs, like Microsoft. And I can't remember the details about that, but I want to talk about that in the future.
Software should be free. Hardware should cost money.
It was essentially that you can't really copyright mathematical computations, and that's essentially what all software is.
That's true.
It's just mathematical computations. It's just algorithms.
It is. That is true. And how can you copyright that? That's as old as the world.
Well, I can see copywriting the intellectual property rights behind it in the design itself. But when it comes to how the software is written, you can't necessarily copyright something that is just a mathematical computation. Anything other than the mathematical computation, like design work and things like that, obviously you can trademark, you can copyright, you can protect those. But as far as, say, if I were to write a simple script, that just said, hello world, I couldn't go out there to the patent office and say, I want to get this protected. They would look at me like I'm retarded.
Paris got That's Hot copyrighted. But
that
was something
Candy
associated.
Crush, the people that made the Candy Crush Saga video game also got the word candy copywritten. So that just really goes to show you.
Well, I think that's still
money
up.
speaks for itself.
The word candy has not, unless it just happened on Friday, been copyrighted. They're attempting to do that, and their basis is that Paris. Go ahead.
I was under the impression it was already done. I may have been mistaken.
Well, it's this past week. It's been in the news quite often to copyright the word candy. And they're referencing Paris Hilton when she had That's Hot copyrighted But Donald Trump failed